Hezekiah? Ah. But you were still in your room.
I figured this would be at least a little easier.
I see.
I'm trying to at least figure out what we're dealing with, or who things to go off of. Make sure nothing slips through any cracks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a list of anyone I'm aware of from the overworld, the nether in the end, as well as a rough list of incidents that I can think of. But I believe there's much more than what I have listed. Once I can confirm at least my list of people, I'm going to put together note sheets. I can figure out a half-decent way to do so. Anything that works in a person's favor, what works against them. Items like Arlo, Ali, myself, and the High Vessel would have the element of possibility of planting the items on you.
The current
That would be a
suspicion
mark against them.
The current suspicion is Arlo.
Agreed.
Which is very unfortunate.
The overworld. I have the High Vessel, Arlo, Ali, Ophelia. I believe her name is Callie. She's one of the heirs, white hair, Wolfkin.
Yes, she's a friend of mine.
I have myself listed on here. You, Kyanite, Amelia, the baker,
Mm-hmm.
Fiori, and Balefire. I believe the guest you had was an overworlder, but
Yes.
the name slips me.
Lady Naomi.
Is there anyone else that you need listed?
Mm.
My
Anyone?
goal would eventually, in better shape, be able to also meet everyone in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Not to directly impose upon them, but I suppose pose as a investigation on everything that's gone on.
Right.
See what people know in relation to certain incidents.
For Overworlders, I don't believe you listed Charity.
I haven't heard the name.
No, she is fairly new. I think she showed up around the time I was imprisoned. And she's a flower spirit who wants to become a knight, apparently. Did you list Lucette?
No.
She's also a flower spirit. Honestly, I think you might have had everyone besides those. It's the ones that I know of.
Very well. Another, my list is far too short. But the High Lady, Exaris, Her name is Reina. She was going under some emotional duress.
Mm-hmm.
Enya and Roinar.
Ah. I know Athena. I know there is someone named Mavis. I might have met them once or twice in passing, but not enough for me to remember anything about them.
Let's see.
There's Vela. I think Elio. There is Lady Catherine, who I believe is heir. Lord Chiron as well.
Right, I was about to say. Byron.
Mm-hmm. Did you list Enya?
Yes.
Okay. I think I had met a Lila once at the ball, but they are not around very often.
Regrettably.
And I found out about someone named Riolette, who I have never met, but they were at the one of the games at the festival had their face on it, and they own a market, so I know they exist. And I believe that is all for the Nether.
Seems about equal. The end. I have Vincent, Jura, Rowena, Zach, Sundu, Skylar, Olivier, and then vague descriptions. There was the fortune teller at the Enderian festival.
Mayrin.
That,
However,
yes,
she has
at
been
the,
missing.
She did have the outburst there.
Yes, apparently she has been missing since then.
I have 2 people listed under split hair.
2 people?
Yes.
I know one of them is most likely Nixie.
One of them was hanging around the... Actually sounds right. The other one, I believe, was hanging around with the High Vessel and Ali the day of the
Chris
island.
Stark. That is the current acting emperor of the end. I believe
That is
his
all I
has
have.
died right now. Well, there is the Empress, though she's not acting Empress right now. There is Amma. She is the general commander. Don't. I think that is all you missed, really. I don't know everyone from the end. The Empress, Chris Stark, Amma, Skylar, Lady Rowena, Nixie, Jorah, Mayrin,
Should be listing
Olivier.
it dead though, shouldn't we? Could be always possible that they're tied in. There was one that Sundu complained about at some point dying. Whether they
Apollo,
were Enderian.
the previous he was heir before he died.
Let's list this one then.
But if we're also listing dead, then for the Nether, there is Kane. who was Reina's brother, and he died.
That must have, yes. That's,
I know he was at the coronation, but don't know how soon after he died.
I've gone back and listed the one that I wish to have gotten to know better. She was a higher up. Pyrrha was one of the
Pyra,
others. Pyra.
yes. She was a previous sorceress of the overworld.
Right.
I think that is a complete list. Um, I think someone else had died in the end before, but I don't know them.
I assume many died throughout.
Yes, I meant after the coronation.
Hmm. As for incidents, I certainly do not have a full list.
Mm-hmm.
I only started on it last. And in, frankly, no particular order. Helia, the trap lighted for her. The Mushroom Island trap.
Mm-hmm.
The Money Fairy in general. Vincent, with more regards to how he was maintaining himself. The threat he put upon Rowena and Helia. There was a picnic bombing.
I
It
heard
was
about that
seemingly
one.
intended for the High Vessel and the High Lady.
Hmm.
This one I don't know all too much about, but a false portal light. There was a night in which Sundu ran and requested that I show her the portal, as they were thinking that one was lit that they didn't know about, and she thought it might be mine. It ended up
Portal?
not being. In the strongholds, there are, from what I've been told, at least, portals. I haven't seen one in action, but that's why they gave me so much shit about mine.
Ah, so there is
Which
another
makes
way
this
into the end.
as far as I'm aware, there's supposedly, or there was meant to be some form of effort at some point after my stronghold became a point of contention. I removed mine in front of Sundu. I can still, I believe I showed the High Vessel the absence of it.
Hmm. That makes more sense as to why they were so, I suppose,
Indeed.
jumpy about the strongholds.
But
Since
nonetheless, they imposed upon me, and I consider that still
I understand that. It's just now
intriguing.
knowing this is more understandable. After all, the Nether also has laws against Nether portals being made.
But there was meant to be an effort at some point to remove the portals, at least from what I know of.
Mm-hmm.
I had brought my concerns with how they handled the stronghold matter to the High Vessel. I had shown her to two other strongholds that I had found. She marked the waystone. I believe Arla marked the waystone.
Mm.
And I was later informed that they were planning on going around and removing all portals. However, Just a few weeks ago, I brought Helia to one, as I knew that there was a grand library in one of them. I was shocked to find that there was still a portal, meaning that the Enderians hadn't gone around and done as they said with their 2-week free pass.
Unless they didn't find that one?
The other one as well still had it. And given that those are the two that the High Vessel was given direct access to, as I wanted them clean off of my hands, I would assume that those two would be the first handed over.
Unless
I
they
don't think they
weren't.
ever even started.
Don't know if they're this serious about the portals.
I would imagine they cracked down on.
Yes, which leaves the option of the High Vessel never inform them of it.
Could be.
I
But
think, honestly, it'd be a
given
good.
how they handle things, I just would not be shocked if they were given a free pass to the overworld and then used it for whatever other.
No.
The strongholds themselves are already building a war bunker in someone else's territory and then claiming rights to it centuries later. Doesn't give me the best impression.
No. But this could be used to, I don't know, change their perspective on you. If you were to willingly give up information on two portals still being.
I don't have them anymore, unfortunate as it is.
I see.
After I had brought Helia and saw that the portals were still lit, I got rid of it for myself. I realized there was not any purpose to having it. And again, I wanted my hands clean.
That is fair.
Already, Sundu had barged in one night with what barely constituted as an, I suppose, requests to come over. Solely because she thought that I might have done something with it. And brought up the worry that even if I was, or even if she trusted me with it, what if someone else used it and it got tied back to me? And thinking back to that, I removed those warp stones for myself at least. The High Vessel and Arlo should still have access themselves, but I simply wanted to close that chapter for myself.
I see.
As I had said, things with Helia had given me a hope.
Mm-hmm.
I have your curse listed, as well as the contraband that we took from that room. The trap you had mentioned yesterday.
Yes.
It's still in better health, like to go get a look myself, but I'm not sure if there's anything left.
No, no trace of it. However, a concern has been brought up today with the recent bomb left in Vincent's home. There was also the mark of the money fairy being there, so this would have been. Apparently, Vincent was a part of the cooking club with the High Vessel and often went there. There is the possibility that that trip was intended for him, as both these past two incidences have had the mark of the money fairy, and one was in his home. This is just a possibility, of course.
It would be strange to leave a... If you're going after somebody and evidently have access to their home, why would you not strike there first before extending to auxiliary
Well, that's the
location?
thing. Even the incident in his home is odd. because they must not know anything about crystallians. Crystallians cannot be harmed by explosions, and yet
Right.
it's, I don't know, seems more like threats.
It would line in with the thought that perhaps the trap didn't work. In an effort to send a warning, but not actually
Mhm.
kill.
But then why waste the potions? Since
I
they're so
think he's
hard to
trying
get,
to get out of it. I'm still
could be.
confident that he is the money fairy. I don't understand his behavior otherwise. During Helly's questioning of him, he was squirrelish. He was caught red-handed and didn't wish to admit it.
He was also mentally unstable at the time due to his condition. We can't exactly treat questioning if he is not at base level with the, I don't know, examination of it being a base level person.
Well, let's think. You're mentally unstable, and you run around, doing whatever it is that the money fairy was, leaving charitable donations in the homes of others, private offices, places you shouldn't go, and disregarding any possible reasoning, whether it was ignorance, stupidity, whatever it may be, in the pursuit of just doing something nice, or whether he had darker intentions, as did his favorite. Disregarding any of that, consequences then catch up. Money Fairy, this character built, is catching suspicion that carries quite a weight behind it.
Mm.
Even if it is charitable ignorance, it leaves room and potential for having done high espionage and breaking and entering in all three realms across the bulk of the population. Of course, you would deny it. And then, perhaps once mentally sound, could be why these efforts are picking up.
I know. I had considered the possibility. After all, I had the two previous. I don't know. If the trap in the cooking club was intended for the high vessel, it is odd that the attempts on her changed from explosives after I had mentioned to Vincent that he seemed the type to more rely on the explosives. I had considered this. And then today happened, and I don't know. Because it could go either way. Either he is trying to cover up, or
Well, if we're
someone is
taking it in a
genuinely
straight
trying
path,
to.
he's mentally sound. The potion trap crops up. If we're taking that at face value of a trap that didn't work in the overworld, it's a clear misdirection.
Mhm.
What reason would he have to go after the high vessel? Or anyone at the cooking club? And now, if your theory holds water, that since he's a member of the cooking club, it would appear that perhaps it was intended for him. Maybe that would be his intention. And then, further leaving a trap in his own home, one that very evidently couldn't threaten his life, even if it went wrong. I think he's trying to get people off of his tail.
It does seem that way. Of course, there is always the possibility that this. I don't know. If, on the small chance, he is not the money fairy, could be them trying to make us think he is even more.
I don't think there's any point to paradoxing ourselves.
I know, but I have to think of all of the options.
Right.
After all, if we pigeonhole ourselves into one option, then that is all we can see.
I have noted here as well the attack on Balefire at the festival in the end.
Mm.
That feels of note as well. I'm not sure I've ever gotten clarification on that, but if I remember correctly, it was. Said her name was Marin.
Marin.
Marin. I remember most strongly something about her walking up to Balefire with words along the lines of "it was you" or "remember your voice, one of the two, before she charged in for an attack.
Mm.
That doesn't paint Balefire in the best of lights.
No. I mean, he did work for the previous high vessel. And, well, we know that reputation. We honestly don't know much about Balefire.
Right. And then last on here is the items planted, which I'm sure we've already discussed into the ground before.
Yes.
This is my rough list before I decided I couldn't stare at a page any longer and requested our spar. But off the top of your head, is there any other incidents that you think should be mentioned? Just in terms of figuring out where allegiances lie.
Not. It's not tied to any person. However, while searching for Helia, we had found a trap. Again, seems to be a
Another.
trap. It seems to be unfinished, but it seems it's a spike pitfall. I tested it myself later when I showed Ollie in the high vessel, and it was immediate
You
death on
tested
impact.
it?
Yes. With a totem. I dropped into the hole and died on impact. Well, the totem popped.
And where was this?
A few 100 blocks in that direction. Almost 1,000. It's just a giant pit in the ground, and at the bottom our line, it's lined with the dripstone spikes.
Just out in the wild.
Yes, and it's not natural. It's a square. Seems they have cut directly down into the ground. We have besides the members who had joined me in the search for Helia, I told the high vessel to keep it to her and Ollie. After all, if they went to complete it, and possibly asked the high vessel to come with them so they could show her something, she would know immediately if she knew the location of it. And it would be a good way to catch them out.
Good plan.
It was Skylar's idea, actually. He was very frantic in saying she shouldn't say anything about it.
mention the... Selfishly, I'll put the your narrative on here. I still would like to see where that leads. What exactly her reasoning was there.
Noted.
Supposed to hide in there is Jura's arrest.
I know recently people have been finding things left in their homes.
Things.
This so far they've been going by Vitus, but they've left a dress, a book, a rabbit, and a cipher on the wall in multiple people's homes, including my office. I believe the end is leading the investigation on that one since the Emperor's room was broken into. Or acting Emperor. Semantics. But
I would really think at that point of two different investigations running around and breaking into places. Perhaps security would be the concern at some point.
honestly, it's taking a bit of a back burner right now due to everything else going on. But I don't know. It's just odd, and the books seem to indicate a code of some sort. Is something I've been having to work on, asking people if they were hit by this, while also having to handle everything else. It's just something to add that's out of the ordinary.
Certainly.
So far, a lot of the recent traps have had to do with doorways. Very simple traps. I don't know. There's also the fact of Vincent had noted that spruce materials were found at his house.
What do you mean?
I had mentioned, because it seems he was told about the attempt on the high vessel in the cooking club, and so we were discussing possible connections. They mentioned about the trap in Helia's house with the spruce, and he said that there was a sign left for him. He did not say what it said, but it was made out of spruce. Which, honestly, a bit concerning. I know it is fairly easy for people to get materials from the overworld, but spruce again.
Do we know of anyone that lives out in any area where spruce would be the most common choice?
Me? I don't know where many other people live. I know Kynite lives in a meadow biome, so not spruce. Though she lives on a mountain. So spruce is nearby. I really don't know. I mean, this spruce forest is very close to the capital. So,
Yeah.
it'd be easy for anyone to get.
trying to think
seems.
from their mind what would be the purpose of Spruce if we were to give everything intentionality.
Direct people to the overworld?
Precisely. But giving a general target wouldn't be wise, would it?
Unless what
Suppose
they're wanting
there's...
to do is sow discord. Make the
I have
alliances
been
between
thinking
the
of that.
realms unsteady.
I was considering that as well, yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you said doorways, you trap enough doorways, then eventually word spreads as it evidently has, and people begin double checking their steps, worried about an invisible enemy, and eventually that invisible enemy needs a name or a face or some claim.
Mm-hmm. I had talked about this with Lady Naomi and my fear of these attacks being mainly to sow fear. Make everyone turn against each other. Take care of.
Not just fear, no. I've seen it with myself, the way my father spun everyone out to be as horrible
Paranoia.
monsters, and moving from dwelling to dwelling as we did. If he saw as much as a branch snapped that he wasn't familiar with, we would be gone by sunset. It would be out. And I lived in fear, and when fear has nothing to grasp, it becomes malice and hatred. When I entered into the wider world, I was bitter because of it. But I must imagine that there perhaps is a intent to sow the same
Mm-hmm.
fear, but mixing enough elements that it's misguided or impossible to direct.
Everyone
Overworld
turning against each
materials.
other.
Exactly. Not just fearing each other, but if the intent could be to send us into another war. And if everything with the goblins is true,
Mm-hmm.
we've proved to the goblins that they cannot beat us in war, and that we would come out on top,
But
as the tale goes. But we are... if they are not strong enough to beat us, then the only other person to beat us is ourselves.
and this alliance is fairly new, at least fresh out of war, out of necessity. Skylar had brought up the idea that the goblin's goal may be to put a goblin on the throne.
What would be the point?
Don't know.
Unless
But
to sow deeper distrust.
it could be
I'm not
why
sure.
so many attempts on the high vessel.
That would imply that either Ollie or Kelly would be a goblin.
It
Ollie I
would.
could see, Kelly I have not spoken enough.
I don't think so. Kelly is. I don't know. She just. I wouldn't rule it out, but I have no indication that she is one either. Ollie has been suggested by Helia to have been the one to plant evidence on me in order to get me out of the way to be an heir.
I know he did spy on a few conversations of ours.
Mm-hmm.
The first one he did not clarify any or discuss it prior. He just listened in. I'm not sure if he wanted to know that and wanted me to know that he was there. And the next that I spoke with you was with Helia, and I made sure he knew. I told him that if he wanted to listen in again, then he was welcome to.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure what to make of it. Regardless, I wasn't around for the war. I never actually had the displeasure of seeing a goblin face to face.
No.
I can't speak to their nature or their wants besides the unjust chaos that I've been told of them. But if I was after chaos, I feel the easiest route would be distrust.
Mm-hmm.
If Goblin was ever so brave to try and go ahead and murder any rulers or anyone on any court or castle, it would immediately light, just, I suppose, a reignition of the war, would it not? But if, again, you can sow enough distrust,
Even pin it on someone else.
or very well make someone else do it. Rexaris, who's a knight of the Nether, if they were able to pull enough strings to place the Nether against the overworld, and Rexaris, doing his duty as a knight, thought the overworld overall as a threat, what's stopping him from attempting on the High Vessel's life? Murder without, I suppose, committing a murder without even being involved at all would be the perfect crime, I suppose.
Indeed.
The overworld would then be without a ruler. The Netherians would worry about
Mm.
what is becoming of their castle, perhaps creating even civil wars. And the overworlders would be directly positioned against the Nether.
I can't help but think of the possibility, since we are going with the angle of they could be wanting to sow distrust, that this uptick in attacks and incidences is them trying to make the courts openly admit to goblins and the fact that they can be any of us, to sow more of that distrust and chaos. After all, not everyone would understand why it was kept secret.
And to consider every angle, yes. People would grow more distrustful about if something so big could be hidden for so long. What else is the royalty hiding?
Mm. We need to figure out those that we can rule as not goblins.
I don't think we can, frankly.
That's true.
It's an impossible gambit. If they're trying to play from the shadows, then in theory nothing should tie back to them. It could be that they're, I'm not sure, in all honesty, what evidence there is against Vincent being the money fairy, but it could be that's getting arranged in such a way to be pinned on him. Meanwhile, I believe part of their suspicion was Amelia the baker had claimed that it was him. It could very easily be her.
He said to
And
comfort her after the fact because she felt guilty, saying it could be him. Or that she had
well, of course,
suspicions that it was him.
she puts on the bright and cheery face. How could you suspect her of anything?
I wish we knew what all they had access to. They can transform into a person, but how do they have the knowledge that person had? How much do they take? After all, Skylar believes that I could not be a goblin because I had a curse on me that my mother had casted, but how do we know if they can take our memories, the very thing that makes us who we are? What if they're not just transforming into us, but I don't know.
It's all theater, it's all facade. What's stopping if you were a goblin? Just either casting a curse on yourself or merely pretending to have a curse.
Hmm.
If I gouged out an eye right now with my sword, I could ever so easily go right to you and claim that in the night, Fiore came in and attacked me.
That is
That's what I
true.
mean. It's all theater, it's all performance. I wouldn't rule anything out. We're dealing with desperation. They lost, and they're trying to crawl back from Ash. They, I assume, would take virtually any measure.
Hmm. Desperation makes for a lot of unexpected situations.
My hope is that desperation leads to recklessness.
Mistakes.
Eventually, one of them is bound to slip up. Our spar took a lot out of me. I'm going to lie down,
Alright.
but I'll try and take more note and document in general. I'll give you more for review. Again, there's not much better to do.
All you can really do is think. But it is a good time to review information.
Indeed.
Hmm.